Marcus Davis stood quietly by his locker on his first day at Lincoln High School. He was new to the town, having moved here only a week ago after his grandfather decided it would be better for him to attend a different school. Marcus didn't mind moving too much. He was used to change. But starting over again was never easy, especially not when you were the new kid in a place where everyone already seemed to know each other. The hallways buzzed with chatter, laughter, and the occasional sound of sneakers squeaking against the polished floors. Students hurried past Marcus, some bumping into him without even saying sorry. It wasn't that they were rude. It was more like they didn't notice him at all. Marcus adjusted the strap of his backpack and took a deep breath before twisting the combination lock on his assigned locker. As the metal door swung open, he caught sight of himself in the small mirror taped inside. His dark skin contrasted sharply with the bright white walls of the school, and his sharp cheekbones gave him an almost intimidating look. But Marcus wasn't trying to intimidate anyone. If anything, he just wanted to blend in. He began unpacking his things slowly, carefully arranging his books so they wouldn't fall out later. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a group of students walking toward him. They weren't hard to miss, especially the tall blonde guy leading them. He wore a football jersey with the name Turner stitched across the back and carried himself like he owned the place. Behind him trailed a couple of others, a boy with a red baseball cap pulled low over his forehead, and a girl with long, wavy brown hair who laughed loudly at something the blonde guy said. "Hey, check this out," the blonde guy said, pointing directly at Marcus. His voice was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "We got ourselves a new face around here." Marcus froze for a moment, unsure whether to respond or pretend he hadn't heard. Before he could decide, the blonde guy stepped closer, flanked by his friends. Up close, Marcus could see that the guy's blue eyes sparkled with mischief, or maybe something worse. "I'm Jake," the blonde guy announced, leaning casually against the locker next to Marcus's. "And you are?" "Marcus," Marcus replied simply, keeping his tone neutral. He closed his locker gently and turned to face the trio. "Well, Marcus," Jake continued, drawing out the name as if tasting it. "Welcome to Lincoln High. Hope you're ready to fit in." The girl giggled, covering her mouth with one hand. The boy in the baseball cap smirked, crossing his arms over his chest. Marcus nodded politely, though he felt uneasy. Something about the way Jake spoke made it clear that fitting in might not be as simple as it sounded. "You don't talk much, do you?" Jake asked, tilting his head slightly to the side. When Marcus didn't answer right away, Jake shrugged and turned to his friends. "Guess we'll have to teach him how things work around here." With that, the group moved on, leaving Marcus standing alone once again. He let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of their stares lingering on his back. For a brief moment, he considered skipping lunch altogether and hiding in the library until the day ended. But then he remembered what his grandfather always told him. Running away doesn't solve anything. You've got to stand your ground. By lunchtime, Marcus had managed to survive 3 classes without any major incidents. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that people were watching him. Some stared openly, whispering behind their hands. Others ignored him completely, pretending he wasn't there. Either way, it was exhausting. When the bell rang signaling the start of lunch, Marcus followed the crowd to the cafeteria. He grabbed a tray and filled it with basic food items, a sandwich, some chips, and a bottle of water, and scanned the room for an empty seat. Most tables were packed with groups of friends laughing and chatting loudly. One table near the back caught his attention because it was mostly empty, save for a few stragglers eating quietly. Marcus headed that way, hoping no one would object to his presence. Just as he sat down, however, the door to the cafeteria burst open, and Jake entered with his usual entourage. This time, they weren't alone. Several other students trailed behind them, clearly eager to see whatever drama unfolded next. Jake's gaze swept across the room until it landed on Marcus. A wide grin spread across his face as he marched straight toward the table. "What's this?" Jake said, stopping, just short of Marcus's chair. "Our new friend thinks he can sit wherever he wants?" Marcus looked up calmly, meeting Jake's gaze without flinching. "It's a free country," he replied evenly. "I don't see a sign saying I can't." The comment drew a few nervous chuckles from the surrounding students. But Jake wasn't amused. He leaned down, placing both hands on the table as he loomed over Marcus. "Listen, buddy," he growled softly. "You may think you're tough, but trust me, you don't want to mess with me." For a split second, Marcus considered standing up and walking away. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the challenge in Jake's voice, or maybe it was the memory of all the times he'd been pushed around in the past. Whatever it was, Marcus stayed seated, his expression unreadable. "Is that supposed to scare me?" Marcus asked finally, his voice steady. "Because it doesn't." Jake blinked, clearly taken aback by the response. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Jake straightened up, plastering a fake smile on his face. "All right, tough guy," he said, stepping back. "We'll see how long you last." As Jake and his friends walked away, Marcus exhaled slowly, feeling the tension ease slightly. He knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. But for now, he had held his ground. And that was enough. Over the next few days, life at Lincoln High became increasingly difficult for Marcus. Jake and his crew seemed determined to make his existence miserable. They tripped him in the hallway, called him names under their breath, and made snide comments whenever he passed by. Yet through it all, Marcus remained silent. He refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. But silence didn't mean weakness. Every insult, every shove, every mocking laugh fueled a quiet determination within Marcus. He remembered the hours spent training with his grandfather, learning how to control his body and mind. He thought about the lessons he'd been taught, not just about fighting, but about patience, discipline, and knowing when to act. One afternoon, as Marcus walked home from school, he found himself replaying the events of the day in his head. He wondered how long he could keep ignoring the bullies before something snapped. Deep down, he knew that sooner or later he'd have to confront them. The question was, when? Little did Marcus realize, that moment was closer than he thought. The bullying didn't stop after that first week. If anything, it got worse. Jake Turner and his friends seemed to take pleasure in finding new ways to torment Marcus every day. They tripped him in the hallways, knocked his books out of his hands, and whispered cruel jokes about him whenever they passed by. Marcus endured it all silently, never retaliating or showing any sign of weakness. But inside, something was building, a slow-burning anger that threatened to boil over. One afternoon during gym class, things took a darker turn. The class had just finished playing basketball, and everyone was heading to the locker rooms to change. Marcus stayed behind for a moment to tie his shoelaces, wanting to avoid the chaos of rushing bodies. When he finally made his way to the locker room, he found himself face to face with Jake and his crew. They were waiting for him. Well, Jake said, leaning casually against the wall with a smug grin on his face. "Look who decided to show up." Marcus ignored him and walked toward his locker, hoping to get changed quickly and leave without incident. But Jake wasn't going to let him off so easily. As Marcus reached for his lock, Jake stepped closer, blocking his way. "You know," Jake began, his voice dripping with mockery, "you're kind of weird. You don't talk much, you don't fight back. What's your deal? Are you too good for us or something?" Marcus clenched his jaw but said nothing. He turned his attention back to his locker, trying to focus on opening it. But Jake wasn't done. With a sudden shove, he pushed Marcus hard against the metal lockers, causing a loud clang to echo through the room. "Hey," Jake barked, grabbing Marcus by the collar of his shirt. "I'm talking to you. Why don't you ever fight back?" The other boys snickered, egging Jake on. Even the girl in the group, Emily, watched with a smirk, though she looked slightly uncomfortable. Marcus stared at Jake, his dark eyes unreadable. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually say something. Instead, he simply pushed Jake's hand away and stepped back, putting some distance between them. Jake stumbled backward, caught off guard by Marcus's calm reaction. His face flushed with embarrassment, which quickly turned into rage. "Oh, so you think you're tough now?" he spat, balling his fists. "Let's see how tough you really are." Before Marcus could react, Jake lunged forward, aiming a punch at his face. But Marcus moved faster than anyone expected. In one fluid motion, he sidestepped Jake's attack and grabbed his arm, twisting it gently but firmly behind his back. Jake yelped in pain, struggling to break free, but Marcus held him steady. "Stop," Marcus said quietly, his voice firm but controlled. "I don't want to hurt you." For a moment, the entire locker room fell silent. Everyone stared in shock as Jake squirmed in Marcus's grip, unable to believe what they were seeing. Finally, Marcus released him and took a step back, letting go completely. Jake staggered forward, rubbing his sore arm and glaring at Marcus with a mixture of fear and fury. "This isn't over," Jake muttered, his voice trembling. Without another word, he stormed out of the locker room, followed closely by his friends. Marcus watched them leave, his expression unreadable. Then he turned back to his locker, finished changing, and walked out as if nothing had happened. Word of the incident spread quickly throughout the school. By the end of the day, nearly everyone knew about what had happened in the locker room. Some students claimed Marcus had almost broken Jake's arm, while others whispered that he must have been holding back because he didn't want to get in trouble. Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain: Marcus Davis was not someone to mess with. The next morning, Marcus arrived at school to find people staring at him more than usual. Some looked curious, others intimidated, and a few even seemed impressed. For the first time since he'd started at Lincoln High, no one bothered him in the hallway. Even Jake and his friends kept their distance, avoiding eye contact whenever they crossed paths, but Marcus knew the peace wouldn't last forever. Sure enough, later that afternoon, Jake approached him again, this time in the cafeteria. Marcus was sitting alone at a table near the corner, eating quietly when Jake appeared with Ryan and Emily trailing behind him. Their expressions were grim and they looked determined. "We need to settle this," Jake said, slamming his fist onto the table. "Right here, right now." Marcus glanced up calmly, setting down his sandwich. "Settle what?" he asked, his voice steady. "You know what?" Jake snapped. "You humiliated me in front of everyone yesterday. That's not something I can just let slide." Marcus sighed, standing up slowly. "I don't want any trouble," he said. "But if you're looking for a fight, fine. Let's do it outside." The cafeteria erupted into murmurs as students realized what was happening. Within minutes, a crowd had gathered around Marcus and Jake, eager to see how things would play out. Teachers tried to intervene, but the excitement was too great, and the students refused to disperse. Out in the parking lot, the air was thick with tension. Jake cracked his knuckles, bouncing on the balls of his feet as he prepared to strike. Ryan and Emily stood nearby, cheering him on. Marcus, meanwhile, remained perfectly still, his posture relaxed yet alert. When Jake finally charged at him, Marcus didn't flinch. He waited until the last possible second before stepping aside, letting Jake's momentum carry him past. Before Jake could recover, Marcus delivered a single, precise punch to his stomach. Jake doubled over, gasping for breath, and collapsed onto the pavement. The crowd went wild, shouting and cheering as Marcus stood over Jake, his expression unchanged. "I told you I didn't want to hurt you," he said softly, shaking his head. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving Jake groaning on the ground. News of the fight spread even faster than before. By the end of the day, Marcus had become something of a legend. Students who had once mocked him now looked at him with respect, or at least caution. Even the teachers treated him differently, unsure whether to praise him for defending himself or punish him for fighting. But Marcus didn't care about the attention. To him, the fight had been necessary, not because he wanted revenge, but because he needed to draw a line. He couldn't keep letting Jake and his friends push him around without consequences, and deep down, he hoped that maybe, just maybe, they'd learn something from the experience. As he walked home that evening, Marcus felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time since starting at Lincoln High, he felt like he truly belonged. Not because of fear or intimidation, but because he had proven himself. Whether the others liked it or not, he was here to stay and he wasn't going anywhere. The next day at Lincoln High School felt different. The air buzzed with excitement as students whispered about what had happened in the parking lot. Everyone wanted to talk about Marcus Davis, the quiet new kid who had taken down Jake Turner with one punch. Some said Marcus was a trained fighter, while others claimed he might have been in trouble back at his old school. No one knew the truth, but that didn't stop them from speculating. Marcus walked through the hallways, feeling the weight of their stares. People stepped aside to let him pass, and conversations hushed when he came near. It wasn't fear exactly, more like awe. For the first time since arriving at Lincoln High, Marcus wasn't invisible anymore. But he didn't feel proud or satisfied. If anything, he wished things could go back to normal. During homeroom, a teacher announced that there would be an assembly later that afternoon. Administration wants to address the recent incident, she explained, glancing pointedly at Marcus. He kept his head down, pretending not to notice. He already knew what this was about. At lunch, Marcus sat alone again, picking at his food without much appetite. A few students approached him cautiously, asking if they could sit with him. When he nodded, they slid into the seats around him, clearly nervous but eager to learn more about him. "Is it true you broke Jake's ribs?" one boy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus shook his head. "No, I didn't break anything. I just stopped him." Another student chimed in. "How did you learn to fight like that? Are you like some kind of martial artist?" Marcus hesitated before answering. "My grandfather taught me how to defend myself. That's all." The table fell silent for a moment, everyone processing his words. Finally, a girl spoke up. "Well, whatever it is, we're glad you're here. Nobody deserves to get bullied." Her comment caught Marcus off guard. He looked at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. Slowly, he nodded. "Thanks," he said quietly. After lunch, the entire school gathered in the auditorium for the assembly. Principal Harper stood on stage, looking stern as she addressed the crowd. "We've had reports of inappropriate behavior involving physical altercations between students," she began. "While we understand self-defense is sometimes necessary, violence will not be tolerated at Lincoln High." She went on to remind everyone about the importance of respect and kindness, though her speech lacked specifics. By the end, most students were bored, and the whisper started up again as soon as she stepped away from the microphone. Later that afternoon, Marcus was called into the principal's office. Sitting across from Principal Harper, he listened patiently as she questioned him about the fight. "Can you explain what happened yesterday, Marcus?" she asked, folding her hands on the desk. Marcus recounted the events calmly, sticking to the facts. He admitted that he had thrown the punch, but emphasized that he had done so only after repeated harassment from Jake and his friends. "I tried to avoid conflict," he said, "but they wouldn't leave me alone." Principal Harper sighed, rubbing her temples. She seemed torn between punishing Marcus and acknowledging that he had acted in self-defense. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "I'm going to give you a warning this time, Marcus. But if anything like this happens again, there will be consequences. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied. When he left the office, he found Olivia waiting for him outside. Olivia was a transfer student who had joined Lincoln High earlier in the semester. She had short, curly hair, wore glasses, and always carried a sketchbook with her. Unlike many of the other students, she hadn't been part of the gossip surrounding Marcus. Instead, she had observed quietly, intrigued by the mystery surrounding him. "Hey," she said, smiling warmly. "Are you okay? I heard you got called in." Marcus shrugged. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a warning." Olivia nodded, falling into step beside him as they walked down the hallway. "Listen, I know we haven't really talked before, but I wanted to say, I think what you did was brave. Standing up to bullies isn't easy." Marcus glanced at her, unsure how to respond. "It's not about being brave," he said after a moment. "It's about surviving." Olivia tilted her head, studying him curiously. "Surviving? What do you mean?" For a moment, Marcus considered brushing her off, but something about her genuine interest made him pause. "I grew up in a rough neighborhood," he admitted. "Things weren't always safe. My grandfather taught me how to protect myself, not to hurt people, but to stay alive." Olivia's eyes widened slightly. "Wow, that sounds intense." "It was. Marcus said simply. But it shaped me, made me who I am. They reached the cafeteria where Olivia hesitated before speaking again. If you ever want to talk or draw, I'd love to hear more about your story. I'm good at listening. Marcus smiled faintly, surprising even himself. Thanks, Olivia. Maybe. Someday. Over the next few weeks, life at Lincoln High settled into a new rhythm. Jake and his friends avoided Marcus completely, clearly unwilling to risk another confrontation. Other students, however, began reaching out to him. Some apologized for not standing up to the bullies sooner, while others simply wanted to befriend him. Marcus accepted their gestures graciously, though he remained cautious. Trust didn't come easily to him. Meanwhile, his friendship with Olivia deepened. They spent time together during lunch and free periods, talking about everything from music to books to their favorite movies. Olivia introduced Marcus to her love of art, showing him sketches she had drawn of the school and its students. One day she handed him a pencil and encouraged him to try drawing something himself. I'm not an artist, Marcus protested, holding the pencil awkwardly. That's okay, Olivia said with a grin. Just doodle. See what happens. To his surprise, Marcus found himself enjoying the process. As he sketched random shapes and lines, he realized it was a way to relax, to let go of the tension he carried inside. By the time the bell rang, he had created a rough outline of a bird in flight. Olivia looked at the drawing and smiled. Not bad for a beginner, she teased. Maybe you'll become the next Picasso. Marcus laughed, shaking his head. Doubt it, but thanks for letting me try. As they packed up their things, Olivia glanced at him thoughtfully. You know, Marcus, you're not like anyone else here, and that's a good thing. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. Her words stayed with him long after they parted ways. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like he might actually belong somewhere. Not because he was strong or intimidating, but because he was finally being seen for who he truly was. As weeks turned into months, Marcus began opening up more, not just to Olivia, but also to himself. He realized that keeping his past locked away didn't make him stronger. It only weighed him down. Slowly, he started sharing pieces of his story with those he trusted, starting with Olivia. One afternoon after school, Olivia invited Marcus to her house. Her parents were out, so they had the place to themselves. Sitting cross-legged on the floor of her bedroom, surrounded by half-finished paintings and stacks of sketchbooks, she handed him a blank sheet of paper and a pencil. Draw something personal, she suggested, her voice gentle. Something that tells your story. Marcus hesitated, staring at the empty page. Drawing wasn't something he thought much about before meeting Olivia, but now it felt like a way to express things he couldn't put into words. After a moment, he began sketching, a rough outline of a house, then a figure standing outside it. As the image took shape, memories flooded back to him. That's where I grew up, Marcus said softly, pointing to the drawing. It was tough. Gangs, drugs, all that stuff. My mom and dad died when I was little, so my grandfather raised me. Olivia leaned closer, fascinated. What was he like? Your grandfather? Marcus smiled faintly, his expression softening. He was strict, but fair. Always taught me to stand tall no matter what life threw at me. He used to say, and strength isn't about hitting harder than everyone else, it's about knowing when to hold back. Olivia nodded, absorbing every word. Sounds like he shaped you a lot. He did, Marcus admitted. Every morning, we'd train together. Not just martial arts, but discipline too, patience, control. He wanted me to be ready for anything. As Marcus spoke, he added details to the drawing. A tree in the yard, a dog lying by the porch. Each stroke brought clarity not just to the picture but to his own thoughts. For years he had buried his pain, focusing only on survival. Now he saw how far he had come, and how much of his strength came from love, not fear. Later that week, Marcus decided to visit his grandfather. It had been months since he last saw him, and guilt gnawed at Marcus for staying away so long. His grandfather lived in a modest apartment on the outskirts of town, filled with mementos of their shared past. Framed photos covered the walls, capturing moments frozen in time. Marcus as a toddler clinging to his grandfather's leg, as a teenager practicing kicks in the backyard, and even a recent snapshot taken during one of their rare visits. Boy. Marcus arrived. His grandfather greeted him warmly, pulling him into a tight hug. "Been too long, boy," he said gruffly, though his eyes sparkled with affection. "What brings you here?" "I needed to talk," Marcus replied, settling onto the couch beside him. "About everything." His grandfather listened patiently as Marcus recounted his experiences at Lincoln High, the bullying, the fights, the friendships he was beginning to form. When Marcus finished, his grandfather nodded slowly, stroking his chin. "You've done well," he said finally. "But remember this, true strength isn't measured by how many people respect you or fear you. It's measured by how you treat others, even those who don't deserve it." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He had fought Jake because he had no choice, but afterward he hadn't sought revenge or gloated about his victory. Instead, he had walked away, leaving the matter unresolved. Was that strength or weakness? "I think I messed up," Marcus admitted quietly. "I stopped Jake, but I didn't fix anything. Things are better now, but I don't know if it's real." His grandfather chuckled, patting his knee. "Fixing things takes time, Marcus. You can't force respect. It has to be earned. And giving someone a chance to change, that's the hardest thing of all." Inspired by his grandfather's wisdom, Marcus returned to school with a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just there to survive anymore. He was there to thrive, to build connections, to inspire others, and to prove that strength could coexist with kindness. Back at Lincoln High, Marcus noticed subtle changes in the way people interacted with him. Jake, who had once led the charge against him, seemed quieter these days. Gone was the cocky swagger. In its place was a cautious humility. One day after gym class, Jake approached Marcus hesitantly. "Hey," Jake said, shuffling his feet. "Can we talk for a sec?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Sure, what's up?" Jake glanced around, ensuring no one was listening. "Look, I know I was a jerk to you. I shouldn't have treated you like that, I'm sorry." For a moment, Marcus didn't respond. He studied Jake's face, searching for sincerity. Finally, he nodded. Apology accepted. Jake looked relieved, letting out a breath he seemed to have been holding for weeks. "Thanks, man. Really means a lot." From that day forward, Jake kept his distance, but there was a newfound respect in his eyes whenever he looked at Marcus. Other students noticed the shift too, and gradually the hostility that once surrounded Marcus faded away. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to bond with Olivia. Together they explored new hobbies, attended school events, and supported each other through challenges. Their friendship deepened, becoming a source of stability in Marcus's life. Through Olivia, he discovered a side of himself he hadn't known existed, a creative, thoughtful side that balanced his toughness with vulnerability. By the end of the semester, Marcus felt like a different person. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was thriving. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope for a future where he didn't have to fight to belong. The start of the new semester brought fresh opportunities for Marcus at Lincoln High. With the tension between him and Jake resolved, at least on the surface, Marcus found himself stepping into a role he never expected: a leader. It began when Mr. Carter, the school's physical education teacher, approached him after noticing how skilled Marcus was during gym class. "Marcus," Mr. Carter said one afternoon as the students were leaving the locker room, "I couldn't help but notice your technique. You've clearly had training." Marcus shrugged modestly. "My grandfather taught me a few things." "Well, I'm starting a mixed martial arts club this semester, and I think you'd be perfect to help lead it. We could use someone like you to teach basic self-defense skills." At first, Marcus hesitated. He wasn't sure if he wanted the added attention or responsibility, but then he thought about his grandfather's words. True strength isn't about hitting harder, it's about helping others. Maybe this was his chance to make a difference. "I'll do it," Marcus said finally, surprising even himself. Word spread quickly about the new martial arts club, and by the first meeting, nearly 20 students showed up. Some came out of curiosity, others because they admired Marcus, and a few, including Jake, because they genuinely wanted to learn. Marcus stood at the front of the gym, feeling nervous but determined. "All right, everyone," he began, his voice calm but firm. "This isn't about fighting to hurt people. It's about protecting yourself and understanding your own strength. Let's start with something simple, a basic stance." As Marcus demonstrated the stance, moving slowly so everyone could follow, he noticed Jake standing near the back of the group. Jake looked unsure at first, glancing around as if worried about being judged. But when Marcus caught his eye and gave him an encouraging nod, Jake straightened up and focused harder. Over the next few weeks, the martial arts club became more than just a place to learn self-defense. It was a space where students from different cliques and backgrounds came together, united by a shared goal. Marcus made sure to emphasize discipline and respect above all else, often reminding them that martial arts weren't about aggression, they were about control. Jake proved to be one of the most dedicated members. He showed up early to practice and stayed late to ask questions. At first, Marcus wondered if Jake was trying too hard to make amends, but soon he realized that Jake was genuinely interested in improving, not just physically, but mentally too. One day after a particularly intense session, Jake approached Marcus as the rest of the group packed up. "Hey Marcus," Jake said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," Marcus replied, grabbing a towel to wipe his face. "Do you ever get tired of carrying all this weight? Like, being the strong one all the time?" Marcus paused, considering the question. "Yeah, sometimes," he admitted. "But it's not about being strong all the time. It's about knowing when to lean on others and letting them lean on you too." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Thanks. That helps." Their conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. Slowly but surely, Jake stopped seeing Marcus as just the guy who beat him in a fight. Instead, he saw him as someone to look up to, someone who inspired him to be better. Outside of the martial arts club, Marcus continued to grow closer to Olivia. They spent hours talking about everything from their dreams to their fears. One evening, as they sat on the bleachers overlooking the empty football field, Olivia turned to him with a serious expression. "Have you thought about what you want to do after graduation?" she asked. Marcus frowned, caught off guard by the question. "Not really. I guess I haven't let myself think that far ahead." Olivia tilted her head, studying him. "You should. You're amazing, Marcus. You've got so much potential. Don't waste it." Her words lingered in his mind long after they parted ways. For years, Marcus had focused solely on surviving each day. Now, for the first time, he allowed himself to dream about the future. What did he want? Who did he want to become? Inspired by Olivia's encouragement, Marcus decided to take action. He signed up for college prep courses and started researching scholarships. His grades weren't perfect, but his determination made up for it. Teachers took notice of his efforts and offered guidance whenever he needed it. At the same time, Marcus's leadership in the martial arts club earned him recognition beyond Lincoln High. Local newspapers wrote articles about the program, praising its impact on students' confidence and teamwork. Even Mr. Carter was impressed, telling Marcus that he had a natural talent for teaching. "You've got a gift, kid," Mr. Carter said one afternoon after practice. "Don't lose sight of that." Marcus smiled, feeling a sense of pride he hadn't experienced before. For so long, he had defined himself by his struggles. Now he was beginning to see that his journey, the pain, the lessons, the growth, had shaped him into someone capable of inspiring others. By spring, the changes at Lincoln High were undeniable. The bullying that once plagued the halls had diminished significantly, thanks in part to the culture shift brought about by the martial arts club. Students who had once been enemies now greeted each other with nods of respect. Even small acts of kindness, like holding the door open or offering a compliment, became more common. Marcus played a key role in this transformation, though he never sought credit for it. He simply led by example, showing others that strength and compassion could coexist. And as graduation approached, he realized that he had achieved something far greater than personal success. He had helped create a community. On the last day of the semester, as Marcus walked through the hallways for the final time, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He thought about his grandfather, whose lessons had guided him every step of the way. He thought about Olivia, whose friendship had given him courage, and he thought about Jake, whose redemption reminded him that everyone deserved a second chance. For Marcus Davis, life at Lincoln High had been a journey of resilience, forgiveness, and growth. As he stepped outside into the bright sunlight, ready to face whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer just the new kid. He was Marcus Davis, a fighter, a friend, and a leader. Graduation day arrived sooner than Marcus expected. It felt surreal to stand on the football field where he had spent so many afternoons practicing with the martial arts club. Now, dressed in his cap and gown, surrounded by classmates and families, Marcus couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come since that first awkward day at Lincoln High. The ceremony began with speeches from teachers and student representatives. When it was Marcus's turn to walk across the stage, he moved slowly, savoring each step. As he reached the principal, she handed him his diploma with a warm smile. For a moment, their eyes met, and Marcus saw something unexpected: pride. He nodded politely before turning to face the cheering crowd. From the front row, Olivia waved enthusiastically, her grin wider than ever. Behind her, Jake sat quietly, applauding along with everyone else. Though they weren't close friends, there was mutual respect between them now, a bond forged through shared struggles and growth. Even Ryan and Emily, who had once been part of Jake's bullying crew, offered polite applause, acknowledging Marcus's journey in their own quiet way. As Marcus descended the stairs and returned to his seat, he allowed himself a small smile. This wasn't just his victory. It belonged to everyone who had supported him along the way. After the ceremony ended, the graduates spilled onto the field to celebrate. Parents hugged their children, cameras flashed, and laughter filled the air. Marcus spotted Olivia weaving through the crowd toward him, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "You did it," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him in a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you." Marcus chuckled softly, returning the embrace. "Thanks, Olivia. I couldn't have done it without you." She pulled back, looking up at him with shining eyes. "Don't sell yourself short. You worked hard for this, and look at everything you've accomplished. You inspired all of us." Her words struck a chord deep within Marcus. For years, he had carried the weight of his past, believing that he would always be defined by where he came from. But today, standing amidst people who truly understood him, he realized that his identity was shaped not by his struggles, but by how he overcame them. Jake appeared a few moments later, hesitating slightly before approaching Marcus. "Hey," he said, holding out his hand. "Congratulations, man, you deserve this." Marcus shook his hand firmly, meeting his gaze. "Thanks, Jake. And thanks for sticking with the martial arts club. You've come a long way, too." Jake nodded, a hint of gratitude in his eyes. "I learned a lot from you. Not just about fighting, but about being better. So, thank you." For a brief moment, the two former rivals shared a silent understanding. They had both grown in ways neither could have predicted when they first met. With a final nod, Jake stepped aside, leaving Marcus to enjoy the rest of the celebration. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus found himself alone on the empty football field. The noise of the festivities had faded, replaced by the peaceful hum of crickets and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Sitting on the bleachers, he let the cool night air wash over him, replaying the events of the past year in his mind. He thought about the bullies who had once tormented him, their taunts, their shoves, their laughter. At the time, those moments had felt unbearable, like weights dragging him down. But now he saw them differently. They had tested him, pushed him to discover his strength, not just physically, but emotionally. Without them, he might never have realized what he was capable of. He also thought about the friendships he had formed. Olivia had been his anchor, always encouraging him to open up and believe in himself. Jake, despite their rocky start, had shown him the power of forgiveness and redemption, and his grandfather's lessons continued to guide him, reminding him that true strength came from humility and compassion. As he gazed out at the darkening sky, Marcus made a promise to himself. No matter where life took him next, he would carry these lessons with him. He wouldn't let fear or doubt hold him back. Instead, he would keep moving forward, using his experiences to inspire others just as he had been inspired. The following week, Marcus packed up his belongings, preparing to leave town for college. It wasn't easy saying goodbye to Lincoln High, the place that had challenged him, changed him, and ultimately helped him find his place in the world, but he knew it was time to take the next step. On his last day, Olivia joined him for one final walk around the campus. They stopped near the gymnasium, where the martial arts club still held practice sessions. Inside, the sound of students training echoed faintly, a testament to the legacy Marcus had left behind. "I'll miss this place," Olivia said wistfully. "But I know you're ready for bigger things." Marcus smiled, looking at her fondly. "You're coming with me, remember? We're going to the same school." Olivia laughed, nudging him playfully. "True, still I think you're braver than I am." "Not really," Marcus replied. "We're stronger together, right?" She nodded, her expression softening. "Right." Months later, as Marcus settled into college life, he often thought about his time at Lincoln High. The challenges, the friendships, the lessons, all of it had prepared him for this new chapter. He joined a campus self-defense program, continuing to share his knowledge with others. He also pursued his interest in art, taking classes that allowed him to explore his creativity further. Through it all, Marcus remained grounded, never forgetting where he came from. He wrote letters to his grandfather regularly, updating him on his progress and thanking him for everything he had taught him. And whenever he faced uncertainty, he reminded himself of the boy who had once walked silently through the halls of Lincoln High, unsure if he belonged. That boy was gone now, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Marcus Davis wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving. And as he looked toward the future, he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would face them with courage and grace, because he had already proven to himself that he could rise above anything.